Sports Live, Kevin Aro. Coming to you live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We are joined by current school board member and AEP employee, Eladio Jaimez, most notably, former Valley Morning Star sports reporter. Eladio, my good buddy. What's going on, man?
What's up, Kevin? How you doing, man? Thanks for having me on here. This will be fun. Let's talk some sports and COVID.
Absolutely. So, uh, so what how have you been, man? I know, you've been out of the sports realm for a while. You've seen a whole new aspect of things, being on the school board and working for AEP. So, starting with your AEP job, how is that? You mentioned you're working from home. How has that been for you?
When all this started, we started hearing more about it, and making preparations and whatnot, right around spring break. Excuse me, the week before spring break, we got notified that if we're able to work from home, we can work from home. And I think when spring break started, uh, for HISD and for most school districts, because it coincided with the livestock show, which I believe was March 17th. That's when we started working from home, and I've been working from home ever since. Which is, I think that we're starting our 8th week now, and it's been extended. They're gonna let us go back to work in phases. AEP Texas and the AEP Corporation have been really good about looking out for their employees. Safety is one of the cornerstones of our company, simply because of the nature of our business. I'm not on poles fixing wires, but our linemen are, and because of that, we have to, as a company, have to put such a great emphasis on safety. Safety's always in the forefront of everything we do, on the tip of our tongues. We start every meeting with what we call a safety contact, or like a safety tip. So someone always offers something safe. A tip on safety, whether it's at home while you're barbecuing, while you're cutting the grass, or while you're at work. The purpose of this is to kind of keep that safety always, that mindset of trying to be safe always, not just at work but at home. And so one of those moves was to keep us safe from everything that's been going on. So if we're able to work from home, we still have employees that are showing up to work to the service centers across the AP Texas territory. People that work like in the warehouses, they have to put out the materials. But we have been working from home. I've been working from home. Uh, you know, I'm not gonna lie to you, Kevin. It's been 8 weeks and I've only worn pants twice. But I wear shorts. Don't get me wrong. I wear shorts, gym shorts, my Vans or whatnot, and a T-shirt, and I do my work. If I have to get on a meeting with you, I'll let you guess if I'm wearing pants or not right now. But if I get on a Zoom call or one of the school board meetings, then we dress up, of course. But it's been a lot of getting used to, but it doesn't compare to what our medical workers are doing, to some of our teachers, our first responders. You talk about people that aren't employed. So I'm not complaining about anything. I'm blessed by the man upstairs that I have a job that allows me to work from home. AEP Texas is that company. They take care of us. They give us the opportunity and the resources and the tools to continue doing our daily jobs, from my kitchen table, where I can drink as many cups of coffee as I want, and get in some exercise. I have a cool row machine right here, right next to me, and I'd like to say that I get on it every day. I don't know, hours at a time. My girlfriend would probably like to hear that too, but it's here, so I get that opportunity. That like I said, I'm blessed that if I have to, or if I get a little stressed, just to come relieve some stress, get on the road, do some exercises, and more than anything, I feel blessed to be working for AP Texas, and being able to work from home when a lot of people either aren't working or working out in the field, working in a hospital, in a clinic, dealing with this thing in the front lines.
And you also, you're on the school board, and a lot of people may not have known that about AEP and how they're handling in this whole deal. But I've seen HCISD be very active on social media, on encouraging the kids, and you guys were still doing the food pickups. Were you a part of all that? Like, are y'all still doing that?
Yes. Was I a part personally? No. We kind of gave that authority to the superintendent, and the administration to handle that or any other business as it arose. Uh, you know, you can ask. There's seven of us trustees. You can ask the other six, and they'll tell you the same thing that we're lucky to be uh, uh, serving a community, a school district, a superintendent, administrators like the ones we do because they're doing things right. They do things the right way. They put students first. I know this all sounds cliche, but we're sports writers, right? So we're all about cliches. They put students first, man. They really do care about the students, the teachers, making sure that they're safe. You know, we talk about safety. Where everything that they've done has been made. Every decision they have made has been made with safety at the forefront of, and the student safety and the teacher safety at the forefront. Because we're not just thinking about students and teachers. You know, you talk about a student, they go home with their parents and siblings. You talk about a teacher, they go home with their spouses and their children. And you know that's why we've seen so much such great spikes with this virus because you know it multiplies really fast if we're not careful. You know, one person can spread it to two, two to four, four to eight, eight to 16, and before you know it, it's all over the place like we've seen. So definitely making sure that that we continue that learning, but in a safe way, and doing the online and school at home like other school districts have has been a big adjustment. You know, I mean, this is the start of Teacher Appreciation Week, and I zoomed in with some teachers earlier today. Then at lunchtime, I had um, I went live myself just to thank them. You know, it's the least we can do because they have really had to pivot, you know, almost do a 180 where it comes from like you leave for spring break, you think you're gonna come back to school in a week, ready to relax and just kick your heels off, kick your shoes off for about a week, and relax, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well no, you're staying home and you're teaching from home, and not only are you teaching your students, but if you have kids, young kids that are in school too, they're staying home, and you're gonna have to help them with homework. So our teachers have really had to do a lot of adjusting, and they've done a superb job. And you know, as Manny Gomez at Harlingen once told me, all I can speak about is Harlingen Cardinal football because that's all I know. All I can speak to is HCISD, man, because that's all I know. You know, I'm sure other school districts are doing a phenomenal job as well. You know, they've had to make the same adjustments. They've had to make the same sacrifices. Their superintendents, their trustees. But I can tell you that in Harlingen, these guys are top notch, man. Our teachers, our superintendent, our administrators, they're top notch, and it makes our job as a trustee easier when it comes to making decisions or when it comes to even trusting them that they're going to do the right job. There's no lack of trust between the trustees and the administration, superintendent, the principals. When all this started, I made it a point to call each principal to their cell phones at every one of our schools and just thank them for stepping up. We were at the very beginning of this where we didn't know what all this was going to look like, but we did know it was going to be hard. We knew it was going to be tough, and we knew it was going to be a huge adjustment sacrifice. I thanked them. I'm like, this is the least I can do, man. I go, I'm working from home. You guys can't. And they've just that, you know, they've taken that ball and they've just run with it. And so it makes it makes our job as trustees easier. We've continued our learning aspect. We've continued the food services because, you know, as you know, and I know, especially us as sports writers, or me as a former sports writer, as a current sports writer, we're kind of privy to meeting a lot of these student athletes that don't have a lot at home, and we meet the coaches. You know, there's a lot of coaches out there, man, that, you know, they either store PB&J in their office, a loaf of bread, something, you know, because there's a bunch of kids that don't have the resources, the means at home for, you know, a full a meal, sometimes a dinner. You know, so being at school is not just about learning, but you know, they get to eat, they get that meal, and sometimes, you know, especially the athletes, they're always hungry, man. They're always working out, and they're able to depend on that. from their coaches sometimes. So that was an important aspect, and that's something that we were blessed that we were able not only to just keep it going, but we've had teachers, we've had coaches step up and go to the schools and put on that mask and just pass out meals. We to go into full detail, I probably couldn't right now, but I know that our superintendent, Dr. Arturo Cavazos, and his staff, they had everything laid out. They had everything perfectly planned. Uh, from about 10:30 to 12:30, you pick up a couple of meals for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then again meals for Thursday and Friday, and to kind of limit the exposure and all that of people to the outside, to the elements. Kids didn't have to come with their parents, and especially if they're going to school where the teachers or the cafeteria workers already know them. We were able to hand out. Man, I wish I could tell you the number of meals we've handed out, and I'm not going to give you a number. I have a number up here, but I may be completely wrong. But it was a lot. It was a lot of meals, a lot of kids, a lot of students that we fed in Harlingen, and that's something that I'm very proud of that our school district continues to do, and we receive the support from the community, from the parents, from the city. It was something that was very much supported in Harlingen to be able to continue to feed our students, because it's as Dr. Gavasso says, it's it's a humanitarian effort when it comes down to it during a time like this. And, I'm very proud of it.
Putting your sports reporter hat back on. Obviously, we had a couple of coaches on here earlier today where, they've been around, and this is new to them, with the season being put on pause, the levels of uncertainty, waiting to see if there was a solution, then finally getting the final word that there would be no spring sports for the rest of the school year. It's just all new for them. As a reporter, how did you see everything unfold, and how would you have reacted to it?
Um, you know, I don't know. Honest answer, I don't know, Max. I've wondered about that. What you guys have done here with Real Sports Live, and talk about stopping and pivoting and adjusting. You know, your livelihood is covering those spring sports.
Mhm.
And when that's gone, so what do you do? And you guys have found a way. You mentioned before we came on live, you mentioned how with the help of technology, and technology has really helped everybody in this. Families weren't talking to each other. If this was 10, 15 years ago, we wouldn't have had a chance to FaceTime our grandmas, our parents. Now we do. So it makes it a little bit more bearable. So, but to answer your question, I don't know what I would have done. I remember in 2009, and this just came to mind. It came to mind at the beginning of all this, but really, I don't know if it was yesterday or today on my memories. uh, Something popped up in 2009, was, I believe, was the H1N1 virus. There was an outbreak. It reached here, and everything didn't get postponed, but they got pushed back. And I remember it was right around the time of the regional track meet. And the regional track meet, back then there was no area track meet. It was district, regional, state, and regionals would always take place in late April. I think maybe the last weekend in April, because state was always 2 weeks later, and it always fell on Mother's Day weekend. As you can see, I'm not wearing pants. Uh, it always fell on Mother's Day weekend, so I'm wearing shorts though. Uh,
It's a
and
PG
I
show.
remember, yeah, I do remember that uh, the the regional track meet got pushed back to mid-May. So the state track meet got pushed back to June. And as a matter of fact, and this was because of that virus. And I remember at the time people thinking that we were overreacting. And I remember as a sports writer thinking, man, this sucks. Like, it was borderline chaotic in my mind. I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like regionals in May and the state track meet in June. And I remember that the state track meet was either the last week of May, first week of June, somewhere around there, and it might have spilled over that weekend, May, June, and but a lot of athletes graduated that weekend or were set to graduate that weekend. And I remember one specific, and if my memory serves me correct, I remember that there, and I may be wrong, but I believe so, because I believe her wearing, I believe, I think I remember her wearing her cap and gown. Trisha Terry, I don't know if you know the name Trisha Terry. She was a mile and a 2 miler from McAllen Memorial. She went on to run at TCU. I want to say that she was a senior, and many athletes were given the options like, well, if you want to graduate and you want to walk, the stage, you're more than welcome to. But if you qualified for state, you're either picking state or graduation. And I remember she picked, if I'm correct, I believe she picked state. She went to go run up there, and the UIL did on the Saturday of the state track meet. It's Friday and Saturday. On that Saturday afternoon, sometime in the evening, maybe 5 or 6, because I remember it was still hot. The sun was out. They they presented every athlete in their cap and gown, and from across the state, any senior that wanted to take their cap and gown, uh, they presented them. And I remember she was one of them. But you talk about sacrifices back then. We thought that was like, man, this is chaos. Like, this H1N1 kind of just really disrupted everything. And now we have kids graduating at the state track meet, and the state track meet, the regional track meet, everything got pushed back 2 weeks. And it doesn't compare at all to what we're doing right now. I really feel for the seniors. I really feel for the seniors. And I wish, and to be honest with you, maybe there have been, I would have liked to see more stories about seniors. I would have probably, talked to more seniors. And you've been talking to a lot of athletes on here. Like I said, times have changed, technology is different.
Mhm.
What I would have done then, I would have probably, talked to a lot of seniors and just, gotten their take, giving them their credit, giving them their one more piece of limelight. You know what I mean? Because I have family, I have nieces and nephews. My girlfriend's son, he's graduating this year. They're all seniors, and I mean, bottom line, it sucks, but it is what it is. You just gotta adapt and achieve, and that's what they have been doing. And I feel for the senior, talking about sports. I feel for the senior athletes. I have a friend whose daughter plays on the Lady Hawk soccer team. And I remember I was texting with her a few weeks ago saying, "Hey, man, I'm thinking about you guys. She's going to be great. She's going to have a great college career and whatnot." And she said, "Thank you." She goes, "I think she's more bummed that she can't take the field one more day." And that really got to me, because as a former sports writer, and as a sports writer yourself, you see how much joy that especially for the seniors, taking that field, knowing that it's your last bird bowl, knowing that it's your last district game, whether it's soccer, baseball, whatever, your last meet of champs. When you're a senior, when you're a senior, and once the season starts, every game, every meet, every contest from that day on, it's your last of this, your last district game against those Fresnos, your last district game against La Feria, whatever it is, it's your last one. And this thing ended abruptly for the seniors, and I really feel for them, man. But I'm really confident that for them, as not just athletes, but as students, as individuals, this is going to really serve them well. And this is an experience that you didn't experience it. I didn't experience it when we were young. We graduated, we walked, and we've probably had to deal with other adversities in life, but as adults. But for them to deal with it right now, when they're kind of in that middle ground, I'm still a student, but I'm an adult, and this is a very valuable experience for them. So for those senior athletes, man, it's got to be tough, and I feel for them.
Definitely, and that was one thing that we talked with some of the seniors. And particularly, we've had some softball players on here where, I couldn't imagine what that Friday was like, because um, taking a step back when everything was kind of starting to get going, I remember that Friday the 13th was the last Friday of school, and schools are just getting out for spring break. Uh, that week before, we had a budget meeting with Joe and the crew. We were kind of figuring out where we were going to go for stories, and we were mapping everything out for our tab. And at the time, it was just, hey, there's this virus overseas. It could be here. People are kind of freaking out. And we were like, okay, well, it's not too big a deal, right? Because we didn't know what to expect. And we just thought, yeah, like you said, people were reacting just a little bit. we get into that final week. Harlingen South Lyford, they play a game on Tuesday. We're at that game. That Wednesday, San Benito is home against Incarnate Word for softball. And we're at that game. We do the game. I get the text that the NBA season got put on pause. And I'm like, whoa, it's really threw a curveball at me. Did not expect that. And I think that's kind of when things kind of started to set in just a little bit. We get to that Friday. We were supposed to cover Harlingen and San Benito softball, their district opener. And I
Right.
was there at the Keys Academy the day before. Coach Silva was helping me find a spot where we can set up. And he's like, hey, as far as I know, we're playing. I was like, okay, cool. So, we'll be here tomorrow. So as I was getting ready to head to Harlingen, I got a text from Coach Silva saying that the game got pushed back. And then the next phone call was Coach Eladio. Coach Eladio told me the same thing. And I was like, okay, wow. Now games are just dropping like flies. It's just kind of like,
Hmm.
wow, we didn't know what was going on. We wound up finding a game in Brownsville, them playing against Mercedes, Brownsville veterans. But talking to the kids now on what that day was like is the bus rides to their games. There was just so much uncertainty. These kids didn't know whether this was going to be the last game for however how long. Is this going to be the last game? So yeah, a lot of us were in uncharted waters. And I remember once everyone had to go into quarantine, it was funny because you could probably appreciate this, was that there was no sports content for about a week. And it's like, okay, what do we do now? So, I actually text Claire, at the Star, hey, how you guys doing? What are you guys doing for coverage, this and that? And, it's tough. And then we saw the Texans make that trade for David Johnson, and so that trade goes down, and all I see on my feed on Twitter is a bunch of sports reporters like, yes, we have content, something to talk
Yeah.
about, something to write about, something to put in the paper, something to fill in our
Right.
news
Right.
segment. So yeah, no, it's been tough, man. It's been tough trying to, navigate through all this. But like you mentioned, just about pivoting and adjusting. This is a part of it. But talking with a lot of the seniors too, you feel for them, and you see some of the seniors will be playing at the college level.
Hmm.
So their careers are not done yet. It's we feel for them, but it's the ones that this was their career. This is what they put all their chips into the spring
Right.
sport. And it's just really sad to see these kids' season just really come to a halt. Um, what did you think was the first major domino effect when it came to the sports world and everything being put on pause?
Well, you mentioned the NBA, and I remember exactly where I was at Chili's. I was at Chili's having dinner with my girlfriend and a couple of friends. And we, like you said, everybody, we've been, some people were taking it serious, some people were not. I was one that I wanted to keep an eye on it. I'm like, we can't just, we can't just ignore it. We can't just say, oh, no, it's not going to happen to us. It's not going to come here. I was keeping an eye on it, maybe a little too much, friends and family be like, well, why do you keep reading up on the coronavirus? I just want to know what's up. That's basically it. I just want to know what's up with it. And I remember getting to Chili's and waiting uh, and looking up. And as a matter of fact, I didn't even see it. I think my girlfriend looked up at one of the TVs there. We were in the bar area, looked up at one of the TVs and said, "Oh wow." And I said, "What?" She goes, "Look." And I just turned around, and it was that statement from the commissioner that the NBA was gonna, let it. At this point, I think we had already heard that one of the players had been infected or had tested positive or two from the
Rudy
Nets or
Gobert.
something. Yeah, something like that. So I'm not a huge NBA fan right now, but I'll touch a little bit more on that in a second. Uh, so I don't know who it was, but uh, when I saw that, it just kind of, I think, and my girlfriend, she'll watch basketball. Uh, Cynthia, just in case, I guess I keep saying my girlfriend. Cynthia watches basketball. She likes the Warriors. I think she's a bandwagon fan, but don't tell her I said that. Uh, but when she's not a big sports fan, but when even her face was like, oh wow, like I was like, oh man, that's big right there, and then everything just started, within the next few days, everything started canceling. Something I was looking forward to, the Masters. It's like, okay, we're postponing everything, and then Tom Hanks and his wife announced that they test positive. So I think for the most part everybody got a little scared. where they admit it or not. People got a little scared whether they believed it was real or not. They're like, oh crap, here we go. Like this is starting to get real. You don't just cancel an NBA season or postpone an NBA season and send everybody home saying, okay, there's no more season if this isn't serious. And for whatever it's worth, I don't know if the commissioner's watching, but I got to commend them, because that was a bold move. And I think that in order for this country to move in that direction, at least to start taking it a little serious, you needed someone like the NBA to say, boom, we're done. Pick up your balls, let's go. This is dangerous. This is serious. And let's come back when it's safe. So for the NBA to have that, whatever their motivation was, you're always going to have two sides, three sides, four sides to everything. Uh, you know, but I want to believe that it's because they were looking out for the safety not just of the players, since they already had a few had tested positive, but for the fans, and I'm sure MLB would have done the same. NHL followed, and that right there kind of put everybody on watch. It made everybody pause, literally, probably, and say, "Oh crap, this is serious." And for a guy, I'm not a fan of the NBA. I mean, I guess I root for the Rockets, but because I used to back in the '90s. But I don't have my heart invested in any teams other than back here. I don't have my heart invested in any teams in the NBA, in the NFL, of course, the Texans, but NBA. But when I saw that, I'm like, man, good for them, man. And I think that's what kind of, as you say, kind of set the dominoes, and it just got everybody. It got everybody watching the news. That's for sure. And then everything just moved from there. When was that, Kevin? Do you remember? Was that the week before spring break or?
It it was the week before spring break. It was a Wednesday. I can find the specific date, but it was on a Wednesday because Incarnate Word came down to play San Benito because it was their spring break.
Oh, okay,
And it was
okay.
one of those weird deals where those a Wednesday game. It was that Wednesday and then Thursday and then that Friday the 13th. So let's yeah,
That's
March
right.
March
That's right.
11th.
Yeah,
March
yeah.
11th. That was that Wednesday when I was in San Benito.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
yeah, right after the game is when I found out on my phone. I got a text. I was like, what? It really threw me off. And just that week before, we had covered that whole San Benito softball tournament. 3 straight days. So the sports were full steam ahead, and for everything to just get put on pause like that was pretty crazy. And you're right. No, I'm with you when I felt that the NBA was the first major domino effect. Um, College took it a step further. They canceled it indefinitely. They didn't
Yeah.
waste any time as far as thinking of maybe pushing things back. Then you look at the high school sports. The first day was March 29th, and the first word was that they were going to allow teams to practice until the 29th. So from a sports reporter's view, we're like, okay, well, we can still manage some content with some practices. We can definitely work with
Hmm.
that, and that
Do
we'll
some
ride through.
features or.
Yeah, we'll ride through this month, and then it didn't take them long to give practices the boot. Like, okay, well now we'll just wait this thing out a month, and then they pushed it back to May 4th, and then we didn't even get to May 4th.
Right.
We didn't even get to that date. And talking with some coaches, they were optimistic, but at the same time, their gut was telling them like, we're done. Like, there's no way we're gonna go back and play. I didn't want to believe that, but the more I watched the news and the more I saw how things were unfolding, I just didn't think it was possible at all. And
Hmm.
then finally, when we got the news, it stunk. It stunk pretty bad. But we're joined by Eladio Jaimez, former Valley Morning Star sports reporter, currently on the Harlingen School Board and AEP employee. We're just talking COVID-19 and how we're all dealing with it. So Eladio, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Uh,
Of course, man. Appreciate it.
we're gonna shift gears just a little bit, and we're gonna rewind the clock just a little bit and talk about what you and I have in common now is we were both at the Valley Morning Star at one point in our lives.
That's
Um,
right.
I think the last of that regime is gone, man. All that's left, is Stefan and Claire's there now, and Brian's still there, the editor. But the OGs, the Dave Favila, the guys that came from his branch, the Buddy Greens, you guys, it was an end of an era when Mark and I left. Um,
Yeah. it's funny because I drove by there yesterday. What's today? Monday? I don't even know what day it is. Yeah, today's Monday, right? Yeah, yesterday I was gonna pick up some lunch, and I drove by there, and I just kind of looked at the building, and uh, it just kind of hit me because that building was such a big part of my life for so many years.
Mhm.
Walking in, I felt I had some ownership, some emotional attachment to that physical building, and I felt like that even when you guys were there, and I would go shoot those Facebook Live, and I would
Mhm.
walk around, and it looked very different. It looked very different, but I would go to the restroom, or I would just kind of walk around and look around, and I've slept in that building, during Hurricane Dolly. I've slept in that building so that I could work. I remember volunteering and saying, "Hey, I want to cover the storm. I want to cover the hurricane." So I remember I spent the night there with David, and Dave Favila, I think, stayed there, or he might have gone home. But we had a photographer, Gabe Hernandez. I don't know if great photographer, great buddy of mine. I was the best man at his wedding last year, a couple of years ago, whenever he got married. Uh, and he's in San Antonio now. He's still shooting, great photographer. And I remember we spent the night there. Got an air mattress and just a bunch of snacks and food, and it was kind of cool, man. So like I felt a special connection to that building, to that newspaper, especially on the sports writing side. With guys like Mike Gonzalez and Mando Garza, who spent years working there, and of course David Favila, Paul Canacher, who's across the pond now, living in England, and Buddy Green, who hired most of us. And it, it, it it's it doesn't feel like it's been almost 20 years that I started working. I started working there in 2002, and I was 25. I was straight out of Pan Am, and I was 25 years old. I was 25 years old. I got that job, and I started. I had already been freelancing for a whole year prior to that, but when I finally came on full time, it was in May of 2002, and I remember that football season. That year, Hartington South had dropped to 4A, and so I was able to cover 32 4A. I was able to cover the Hawks, locally. So that was fun for me because I had a lot of friends and family that either followed the Hawks or former Hawks or were playing for the Hawks. So it was cool to stay there locally and be able to cover that district 32 4A. But no, man, like you said about the Valley Star, that place was very special to me. It helped create who I am now. I remember Mondo and I would stay after hours when we would put the paper to bed or put the sports section to bed, and we would stick around outside and talk. We would talk about, are we going to be here forever? What are we going to do next? Are we going to do anything next? And I always knew that as much as I loved it there, it wasn't going to be a long haul job for me. Although I wanted it to be, it just, the way it worked out, I was there from 2002. I left in 2012 to go work at TSTC. And I would always kind of joke about running for politics for years and years and years. And I use the word joke, I use the word joke loosely because part of me was serious. And, but I would just, say, oh, I'm gonna run for mayor of Harlingen one day. Like, I would tell my friends, we'd be at a bar or whatever, and just to see what they would say, family. But as I started getting older, I knew it was something that I wanted to do, and one of the things that I really enjoyed about working at the Valley Morning Star was building relationships within the community, and not just in Harlingen. I mean, I already had relationships here, and I strengthened them, but even in San Benito, I love San Benito. I love you guys. Los Fresnos, Westlaco, Mercedes, anywhere, The thing is, and you know this, Kevin, when you write about a person's kid and you put them in the newspaper, it's special, man. It's special.
Mhm.
When a dad and a mom can pick up the newspaper and see their son's name or their daughter's name uh, for doing what they love, which is either playing football or running track or playing softball, running cross, whatever it is, and they get to see the kids in the newspaper. That's something special, man. And I didn't really understand it until years later, how special it was to be able to do that. You know, we're getting paid for it, and we love it. You know, we get to go to games. We go to games, and we watch sports for a living. You know, but it was really something special that we were able to accomplish, that we were able to do, that you're doing right now, and to be able to put pen to paper, and then kind of in an old school way, either picking up the newspaper, now you can read it in an app, but still seeing your kid's name in print, and for the kid himself or herself to see what they've done, and read it, and being able to, again, I'm thinking old school, but being able to clip the newspaper article and put it in a scrapbook or something. I once overheard a colleague of mine. I won't say who it is, but I once overheard a colleague of mine. He took a phone call from a parent that said, "You left my kid's name out or whatever." And we got a bunch of those. I'm sure you guys get them now. "You left my kid's name out or whatever, and this and that." And I remember he told the parent, he goes, "Hey man, I'm not in the business of making scrapbooks. You know, I'm in the business of recording history. You know, and as a journalist, I get that. I get that, But working for a community newspaper, we're not gonna get every kid's name in there. I knew that, and we shouldn't. Like you shouldn't. It's like let's put the roster in the story just so the kid's name. No, if the kid did something, you put it in there. There's inches you have to fill. If it's too long, it's too long, and you get what's more important in the story. But in a way, especially in a smaller community like we have here, it is a little bit. You do kind of have to look at it as kind of, what, you're providing scrapbook material, just the way coaches use us for quotes for bulletin board material or whatnot. You kind of, it's a little bit of a, you have to kind of take into consideration, and I always did. I took it too hard when I was covering a game. I always, I remember specifically one time I was at Real Hondo, and I was covering a football game there, and somebody came up to me on the sideline. I was a stringer. Somebody came up to me on the sideline, I think one of the assistant coaches, and said, "Hey, man, I'm gonna forget the guy's name right now. I want to forget both their names. Whoever the current running back was, he goes, he's X amount of yards away from breaking the school record of rushing yards in a season." I said, "Okay, well, once he breaks it, come and let me know." He goes, "Okay." So I'm keeping track of everything. And then that assistant coach goes, "He did it, man. He did it. New school record and this and that." I'm like, "All right." I go, "Who was the previous record holder?" Boom, boom. "And who was well, how many yards did he have?" That coach had it all, man. And I want to say that assistant coach that was telling me was the late Coach David Longhoffer. Rest in peace, Coach. I want to say it was Coach David Longhoffer, man. That guy was cool and great coach. And he told me, he gave me that bit of information, and I remember thinking, man, this is cool, because I went back and wrote my story, and I said that this Real Hondo kid, who's now a grown man, because this was back in 2001. I said, he rushed for so many yards, broke a school record, previous school record held by so and so. It made me look like a pro, dude. I remember Buddy read that. He goes, "Hey, man, this is cool, man. How'd you get all this info?" I said, "David Longhoffer gave it to me." He goes, "Man, this is cool." And I think I impressed Buddy. And you ask anybody that worked for Bud, and if you can impress Buddy, that was a big deal, man. Especially for us that grew up reading his articles. So it's little stories like that, And I remember people in Rio Hondo would then tell me, like, even now, I think about a year ago, I was talking to somebody, and articles like that endear you to those communities, and I really love that. I really love that. Not because I wanted to be friends with them or whatever, but one, as a reporter, you develop a reputation and you develop your sources that way. Just you develop that credibility with them. It's like, okay, well, this guy's cool, man. So they'll you develop sources when you need real sources. But also from the standpoint of creating the scrapbooks of being a journalist, you kind of create these relationships, these professional relationships, to where it just makes your job a little more rewarding sometimes. And like I said, not too long ago, somebody mentioned that article, maybe a couple of years ago, about that running back and how he broke the school record, and the school record might have been broken ever since then. But those were always my favorite type of stories. Those were the type of people and relationships I like to build. I love meeting people, man. I love meeting new people, asking them questions. I still, I get accused of being metiche and gossip. I'm like, hey, that's a journalist in me. I just need to ask questions. And so I really missed that aspect of talking to the community until I ran for school board, and it somebody asked me what do you like about being on the school board. It's kind of a hard question to ask, but I actually had an answer for it because when I was a sports writer, I had those relationships where you could talk to the kids, the student athletes, the parents, and just talk, just kind of have this open communication. And that went away when I started working, when I left the newspaper. I had an office job at TSCC, great place, great institution, but I was in an office, and that's not me. I work at AP now, where I do have an office, but I'm a little bit more out and about. Obviously, right now I have a home office, but it's different. It's different than other places. But the trusty part, where you can engage and talk to the community, hear their needs, and just develop those relationships. To me, I compare a lot to being a sports writer, because you're kind of out there getting information, talking, meeting people, and as long as you do your job and you don't burn them, man, those people take care of you.
Definitely. Yeah, I know we have plenty of stories about the Star. I remember when I was working with the White Wings, I think it was 2012, 2013, 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. I would have to go down to the Star, and I had to look for Dave. And I remember I was sitting in the front office waiting for him to come by. I didn't know at the time, and see, they didn't tell me either. I would go by like at 12, 1 o'clock, or early in the afternoon. And if people don't know that, sports guys don't get there till 5 o'clock, maybe 6 o'clock
Yep.
sometimes, depending on the day. But they didn't tell me that. But I remember just walking in the building and asking for Dave, and oh well, he's not here yet. I'm like, okay. But I would always be in contact with the Star, and I remember I would send them whatever I had written up on the gamer from the Wings, and it would come out there on the sidebar a little bit, every now and then. Or Freddie Gonzalez would go by and cover the games. Mark Molina would go by and cover the games, and John Cannon would stream. Was a stringer, I think, at the time. He'd go by and do a couple of special features there. So yeah, definitely a lot of history, there at the Star. A long line of names. The great Greg Silver, the legend.
The
He's
legend, Greg Silver.
yeah, the goat. He's been there. Mikey G, who's over in Westlaco now. I tried to get Armando on. He said he wasn't able to go today, because I'm like, I can't. I was talking to Brett Esparza earlier. He's like, you're gonna have Eladio on there. I was like, yeah. I was like, and I tried to get Armando, because I was like, you can't have Armando without Eladio.
Yeah.
I was like, that's
Yeah.
PB and J right there. So, and Joe's actually traveling. He's coming back home right now. He was visiting his granddaughter for his birthday. He was gonna come on this show, but he was stuck in the middle of nowhere, so he didn't have signal. So I was trying to reunite everybody.
Like a round table.
Yeah, we'll get that going here at some point for sure.
That would have
But
been cool, man.
yeah, and I think as a reporter, I think you may have been at the Star, uh, or no, you were probably you were at the Star till 2012.
2012, November 2012.
So, because I remember when we all went to, was it Kingsville, to cover the Port Isabel game, the regional quarters, was it, against Belleville?
Yeah, I had just left the newspaper, I think, and
Right.
I did some color for Joe up in the press
Yeah.
box. They
Yeah, and
won
I
that game,
was,
didn't it?
huh?
Did PI win that game or?
I think Belleville ended up winning that game.
Okay, but it
Because
was a
yeah, I
fourth
was on
rounder,
the,
wasn't it?
yes, I believe so. Because if it not the year before, the year after, um, it was me, Joe, and Armando that did the Madison Sherryland game, I believe at Buck, and then we went from Buck to Cabinus, not Cabinus, Cal Allen, for the PEI Lavernia game.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
So it's either the year before or the year after. But I
It
do
might have
remember
been.
that. I do
I think it
remember
was a
that,
year after. Yeah, because
right?
I went to the PI Lavernia game with Mike Gonzalez. We drove up
Okay.
there for that game. Yeah, and we somehow
Okay.
snuck onto the sidelines. I think coaches still knew us. We're like, hey, oh yeah. We weren't covering anything. We were just watching. And
Nice. Yeah,
yeah, I think that was a third round game.
it
Or
was
it was a third round game, and PI had them, but I think they blew it late or something. Uh,
21-14. I remember.
yeah. At Cal Allen in 2010, I watched. I covered the Cardinals versus San Antonio Stevens. They lost a double overtime game. They came. Uh, they came one missed extra point from possibly advancing to the fourth round back-to-back years, because that year that was Kevin Ledesma's and Randy Bermea's junior season, and that was a very good team, man. And they should have beat San Antonio Stevens, because San Antonio Stevens just had that, I forget his name, Mikhail something, Mikhail Williams. I don't know, but Harlingen did a good job, and it was such a good game. I covered it with Greg Silber. It was freezing. They moved us to the roof of the press box. We were inside the press box. They moved us to the roof. It was super cold, man. We just went back down the field, and I was down there with Greg Silber the whole time, and it was very close. I remember Stevens went on to play uh, not Austin, Wagner, I believe, and they beat him in a close game. Uh, but I remember thinking, man, it's like Harlingen could have been the fourth round next year. They go play in the fourth round, and you really think about it. That group that in 2010, 2011 with Randy and Kevin and those guys. I mean, they're really special, because they were that close to being back-to-back fourth round teams. So I mean, I look back in my years at the Star, and uh, there's just so many. I was blessed, Kevin, to be able to cover so many of the big storylines from when I was there, like the Billy Garza and the Porter and the Hardys and South Lady Hawks uh, softball team that went to state. I was able to cover Santa Rosa when they went to state in 2009. When Ed Couchelsa Yellow Jackets, the football team, had a Valley record. I think it's been broken since, but I believe a 36 game regular season win streak. You know, and it was snapped by Westaco. And I remember Mishak Rivas was a senior, and I think he went crazy on him, 4 touchdowns and almost 300 yards. But uh, I was able to cover the Cardinals in 2011. 11 go to the fourth round. Numerous state champions at the state track meets. The Hernandez brothers from Raymondville, winning gold. Uh, it just the list goes on and on. And you talk about special memories for these kids, man. Those memories, I hold them close to my heart, and to have been able to do all that in the span of almost 12 years, 11 years, 10 years, to me was very rewarding. It's something that I don't I don't take for granted. I miss it. I do miss it. Sports writing, it's something special. And guys I worked with back in the day, guys actually I looked up to, like David Hinojosa are still at it, up in San Antonio doing his thing. And I moved on, obviously by choice, because nobody pushed me away. But I think I was ready to move on at the time and move on to something else. And I have not regretted it since. I do miss sports writing, and because of that, I hold all these memories close to my heart. All these things I was able to cover, and not just covering the games, but I remember, and I'm probably gonna get the year wrong, but in 2004, 2003 ish, San Benito had a really good football team with a quarterback named Randy Reza. I don't know if you remember him.
Mhm.
Uh, Randy Reza and Hardingen was Hardingen, and I remember San Benito was over the moon with their football team. They were undefeated, maybe 8-0. Hardingen was 7-1, and Battle of the Arroyo was taking place at Old Greyhound Stadium. And I remember Buddy Green said, he goes, "Hey, I'm gonna go cover it." We had 3 people covering that game. Paul Canacho was covering the game, I was doing a sidebar, and Buddy, I was the king of sidebars, man. Whenever a good game came up that it wasn't my beat, I'm like, hey, Bud, let me do a sidebar. He goes, all right, man, get out there. So I remember Paul was covering the game. I was doing a sidebar, and for this specific battle of the Arroyo, which it was like San Benito was just licking their chops, man, to get after Harlingen. They had him at home, Greyhound Stadium. You probably never covered a game at Greyhound Stadium or went to Greyhound Stadium, but it sucks, man.
I,
Coming from
I,
a former Cardinal, but
I
it sucks with respect, because that was their stadium, man. That was like, you go into the rivals' big house, and it's intimidating, man. It's Greyhound Stadium, and so the game was there, and Buddy wanted to go write a column. And I remember we had three stories, and San Benito came out strong that day, and then Harlingen was able to make a game of it. But San Benito, they were destined to win district. They went three deep that year. I believe they lost to Smithson Valley in the third round. Mario Pena was the coach, another legend, Valley legend, and Randy Creeders is still coaching the Cardinals. Uh, and San Benito was able to take that game. And so covering, it was a big game, an important game, one of an important game in the history of the Battle of the Arroyo. But to me, what was most memorable was covering that game with Buddy Green, you know, and walking from my car to the stadium, through through neighborhoods, because that's, you had to park in a neighborhood, walking back with Buddy, and just having conversations about old Battle of the Arroyos that he covered in San Benito and in Harlingen in the 80s and 90s. And those are the memories that never go away, man. And just to kind of being able to share that with Bud, that game. Another time that Buddy tagged along was when uh, Brownsville Porter was undefeated, and they were hosting Edcott Chelsea in the last game of the season at Sam Stadium, and it was for a district title. And uh, it was a good game, and Buddy wanted to go because he wanted to see what Billy the Kid Garza was all about. And I remember uh, he drove us in his van, I believe. He had a van, and me and Mike went to the game. Mike just went to go watch. I covered the game. Buddy watched, and that was a big game. Edcott Chelsea, kind of took it to them. A lot of people remember the Brownsville Porter Cowboys from 2003 and Billy Garza, and but they never won district. Edcott Chelsea beat them in the last game of the regular season, spoiled that district title. Uh, and actually, I want to say no, Edcott also lost in the first round to Sheridan, I believe. But Brownsville Porter went too deep. They beat PSJ in the by district, and they lost to GP up there in Gregory Portland. But I remember after the game, Joe Solis, the legend, Joe Solis told me, he goes, uh, we have tradition. Brownsville Porter needs to earn it. Like that was his quote, as far as, because he knew that everybody was pulling for the Cinderella. It's not that nobody wanted Ed Cups to win, nobody wanted Joe to win, but everybody was pulling for the Cinderella. This was Brownsville Porter, never before in the playoffs, never before a winning season, and here they are, one game away from being not just having a winning season, but being undefeated and being district champs. And so, Ed Cup Chelsea's denied it, man, and so goes sports, right? We talked earlier about everything being canceled, and after all those years of covering sports, as much as those memories, uh, I hold them close to me. When I left the sports writing business, I kind of really stopped watching sports altogether, even on TV. Even through now, like every now and then, I'll watch the Super Bowl. I'll watch, obviously, Astros baseball. I'll watch things here and there. I'll watch the Masters. I'll watch the U.S. Open. That's about it. I may keep up with other majors or other big, the Players Championship, but the Masters and the U.S. Open I will watch. Uh, but it's almost like, I kind of had my fill of sports, and I'm sure you've seen this commercial that's been showing recently about how we miss sports. I think it's on ESPN,
Mhm.
and man, I miss sports, dude. I
Oh
miss
yeah.
sports. I'm not saying, I've seen all these memes, or on of their memes on Facebook, where it says, you know, all these sports stars are gone and nobody misses them. It's the medical workers and this. And yes, they're not vital to our existence. I'm not saying that Tom Brady or whatnot, whoever your favorite athlete is vital to our existence. There are more important and critical roles that are played by other individuals that sustain our way of living. That are critical to our survival. But for guys like me, you, we miss sports, bro. I get it, man. I get it now, and I do miss sports. I hadn't really sat down to watch a bunch of games, but uh, yesterday I was watching the Cowboys Packers. They were showing a replay of the 1996 playoff game, and
Mhm.
I started watching it, man, because I'm like, man, that was I remember that game. It was cool, you know. But it's one of those things where I guess you don't really realize what's gone till it's gone. And sports has really had a huge impact in my life. And I'm sure you're watching. I don't know if you're watching The Last Dance right now.
Yes, I need to catch up on the last two last night, but we've been watching it.
Well, last night, they touched on the third championship of the first three-peat, and that was against the Phoenix Suns. And when I was watching those clips, I was telling Cynthia, I said, "Man, this kind of triggered a memory that I had forgotten about," and that's watching those NBA Finals series with my dad. you
Hmm.
know like I remember watching the Pistons, and I was a big Pistons fan. I don't know, a Piston fan, I don't know why, but I remember watching the Pistons beat the Lakers and the Trailblazers to win those NBA titles, and then watching the Bulls make their first three-peat run, and then of course the Rockets beating the Knicks and the Magic, and then watching, and that's kind of between the two Pistons titles, the three Bulls titles, and the two Rockets titles. Uh, I remember looking forward to the NBA Finals every year with my dad. My dad passed away in 1996, so at the beginning of '96. So by the time that I think that's when the Bulls beat the Supersonics for their first of the second three-peat run. I would still watch, but I was already not, like, not that I wasn't interested because my dad had passed away, but it was so special, and I had kind of forgotten about that. And when I started seeing these clips and it was specifically with the Suns, because my dad would call Danny Ainge Danny Angie, and my dad would call Dan Marley Dan Marjorie. And I remember yesterday when I saw them, Danny Ainge and Dan Marley. I'm like, Danny Angie and Dan Marley, because that's what my dad would call him. I don't know if he was doing it just to be funny or what, but that's what sports does to us, man. It builds these memories.
Yeah, I was on my phone earlier because talking about sports, and it's we're still finding ways and whatnot and sources. But while you were talking, Coach Marco Munguia from San Perlita, he texted me that he had got some big news that Megan Kenny is his senior point guard. She just committed to play college basketball at a Midland University in Nebraska. So
Awesome, man.
I was sharing that on our social media site. So if any of you that have followed Sam Perlita know that Megan Kenny was easily one of the most underrated point guards in the Valley. Uh,
Hmm.
Classification 2A or not, the kid can play. So that was some pretty cool news that Megan Kenny committed to play college basketball at the next level. And that's another thing we've kind of taken up too, is we've been getting in communication with some coaches and players, and kids are still going to be signing to go on and play at the college level. So we've also even had some virtual signings on
That's
here
cool.
as
I've seen that.
well.
I've seen that, man. So and before, I'm gonna have to get off in a little bit because I hear the dinner bell. Uh, the I gotta give you guys kudos, man, for what you guys have been doing. The pivot, the adjusting, the adapting and achieving, man. Because you guys haven't forgotten about the kids. You guys haven't, It was when I remember when me and Paul and Mando and everybody, Mike was at the start, Dave, and we would kind of be like, it's for the kids. People would always tell us like, hey, man, it's for the kids, and it was almost like a running joke where we would tell each other, it's for the kids. But it is, it really is. Like I said, I used to, you have, a job where you get the opportunity to write about sports, for however long you're going to be doing it. But it really is about them, man. And because they're the ones out there busting their butts, practicing, showing up to practice, and the ones that really care, and the ones that are really passionate about their sport and about their craft. Same with the coaches, and it's an honor. It's an honor to do that. And you mentioned Marco Munguia, man. You tell him I said congratulations. Marco's a good buddy of mine. You know, we used to work up a sweat at CrossFit back in the day. Uh, and we did, man. And he's a good guy. The Munguias there in Raymondville. I always tell him that whenever I step foot in Willacy County, I'm an honorary Munguia. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'm an honorary Munguia. And I'm gonna have to text him here in a little bit.
Yeah,
But Kevin, I just want to say thanks for having me on, man.
absolutely.
Uh,
Before we go, any shout outs you want to give to family and friends before we go?
Uh, you know, there's so many that I probably leave some out, but I really want to give a shout out to the seniors this year. Not just again, I want to touch on that, and it's important because it does suck. Plain and simple, it sucks. And some of them will adjust. Some of them will, will may brush it off. Some of them may not. But I do want to give a huge shout out to not just the class of 20 from Hardin Gym, but the class of 20 in general, man. Class of 2020 here in the Valley. I covered so many high school athletes in my 10, 11 years as a sports writer that I saw a lot of seniors have really great senior seasons. So for this to end abruptly and have no closure, you talk about a life lesson. Uh, there's some great things in store for each one of them if they will allow it. And I just wanna give them a shout out more than anybody's to the senior athletes of 2020, man. Best of luck to you guys. God bless you guys, and just put God first, and you're gonna get over this and get to that next level that you want to, whether it's in academics, a career, the military, athletics, whatever it is, man. You're gonna get there. There's just a huge stepping stone. It's gonna make you stronger for that next step to come.
It's Eladio Jaimez on the school board over at HCISD, AEP employee, and a former Valley Morning Star sports reporter and honorary member of the 956 Media Mafia. So, Eladio, thanks for joining us, man. Before we go, shout out to everyone that came out on our show today. We had a stacked lineup. We had Iris Iglesias, Richard Tressler, Elias Martinez, and Debbie Esparza join us earlier today on the show talking softball. And then earlier today, sandwiched in between was Zaravian Armendariz, Dylan Ramirez, and Jason Cantu from Raymondville. And then our final guest here, Eladio Jaimez, joining us this afternoon. So be sure to be back with us on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. We're going to have the guys from South Texas Football Unlimited, Justin and Jake Romero, are going to be joining us. We're going to be talking some more high school football. At 3 o'clock, we're going to have Eladio's phone fell. NXT superstar Raquel Gonzalez. She was a former Hidalgo Lady Pirate. She's going to be joining us. And then at 5 o'clock, a former La Feria Lion, Darius Hernandez, he'll be joining us as well at 5 o'clock. So, Eladio, thanks for joining us, bud. It was good catching up with you, man.
Thanks, Kevin.
Go enjoy your dinner and stay home and stay safe.
You give Jake my best. That's an old buddy of mine too.
Yeah, he is a Cardinal product too. So yeah.
He is. He's from Argent.
Great.
All righty, brother.
We'll
Thanks,
see you guys.
man. Peace out, guys. Peace out.